Today we're going to talk about buying a laptop. This is a huge decision and there are no real right or wrong answers because really it depends on you and what your needs are as the one that will be using that laptop. However, no matter what laptops you're looking at, Dell, Apple, Razer, HP, there are three things that you want to look at when looking at any of these options. These three things are the CPU, also known as the processor, RAM, and storage or hard drive space. Before we get into any of that though, let's talk about Windows 10 or Mac OS. What you should really be asking yourself is, what have you been using? Are you willing to spend the time to get to know that new OS? And so that's really the biggest hindrance, because ultimately you get a new laptop, you want to be able to start using it and functioning at that high capacity that you can as quickly as possible. So let's jump in. First, the CPU. Now, if we're comparing it to cars, the CPU is like the engine. It's that horsepower. How much horsepower do you want in your car? Now, the CPU is going to have some weird numbers that maybe you're not familiar with, but what you really want to compare that to is to the applications that you'll be using, because most applications have a minimum CPU capacity that they need to function properly. Now, while, say, Microsoft Office will work on bare minimum CPU requirements, if you're using Exemplify, that's going to need a certain amount of horsepower or CPU power. Or similarly, if you're using something else like Photoshop or other programs for video, that's going to require a CPU with more capability. So I'm going to throw out a term, future-proofing, which I would say is something you should also consider when buying a laptop. So in this case, I would recommend a processor with at least 2 gigahertz or higher with a 2 to 4 core minimum. Next up is RAM. The amount of RAM will determine how many apps you can run at the same time. Now, I've had some people say, hey, I've only got Chrome and Word open. Why is it so slow? But then when you take a closer look, Chrome's got like 50 tabs open. And so that's what's going to be taking up your RAM. Now, that's not to point a finger. I've been known to have a heavy tab rate every now and again. It just happens throughout a workday, but don't feel guilty about it. It just means you might need a little more RAM than what you've currently got. Now, referring back to the Exemplify and Office 365 requirements, let's see, they only require 2 to 4 gigs of RAM, but that also means that while these are open, they'll be using 2 to 4 gigs of RAM each. So if you're using, say, Chrome or Firefox with your other programs, now you're already going to be pushing well past, your amount of RAM available. Currently in fall 2020, I feel like 8 gigs is about minimum. If you can go for 16, again, you'll help future-proof yourself a bit and give yourself a bit of a buffer so that you can really make this laptop last well beyond its warranty. Last but not least, storage. How much do you need? This is a bit more of a personal question because it coincides to how you use your computer. If your computer is mostly used for Word docs, PDFs, Excel sheets, you probably don't need that much space. However, if you're using your computer to back up photos and videos that you're taking with your phone or other devices, then that's what could chew into some of your storage space. And what you need to ask yourself is, do I need all of this on my computer? So for example, you may be able to offload some of those things onto, say, a cloud storage service or even an external hard drive. Hard drives usually range anywhere from 128 gigabytes to, say, 1 terabyte. So I would say 128 gigs of space is pretty low, 250 gigs of space is about in the middle, and then 500 gigs to a terabyte is on the higher end, giving you more space on your hard drive. Last note on storage, you want to make sure you're looking for something with SSD. That stands for solid state drive. Now, solid state drives are a newer technology than their older SATA counterparts, and they're exponentially faster than the other hard drives. So if you can spend a little more money, I would definitely recommend the solid state hard drives because it will affect how fast your computer starts up and also how fast programs open up on your computer. And that's it. CPU, RAM, storage. Now, when looking at these three variables, the cost is going to vary with each one as well. Additionally, it's going to vary with what you go with. Say for a Dell versus an Apple, there's going to be a significant price difference. Apple, they're clean machines, but you're definitely going to pay that Apple tax. So if you've been accustomed to an Apple, perhaps you're used to it and it makes more sense to go that route. Maybe you can skimp a little more on some of the specs to get the Apple device that works for you. Lastly, if you can, while it's not so ideal to get to a store, but if possible, to kind of get your hands on these laptops, just so you can get a feel for them before you buy, because it is a good chunk of change whenever buying a laptop. And so you want to make sure whatever you're getting is the best fit for you. And that's all we've got for laptop purchases. As always, feel free to reach out to us at lawhelpdesk.scu.edu for any questions, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.